I watched Psycho, a 1960 film classic, to determine does it hold up and is it worth your time. Let's find out.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
You're weird.
A quaint bed and breakfast, strange voices, and a stabbing spree. No, we're not talking about modern day London. It's Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Will we enjoy it, or will we hope our eyes rot out? If you've ever been on the Universal Studios backlot tour, you've seen the Psycho house. Just as in the film, it sits atop a hill, looming over goggle-clad yellow minions. Well, that part's not in the film, but the house is. I'm getting off track. Alfred Hitchcock is widely known as the master of suspense. His shows and films are intense and use every technique at his disposal to build tension and pay out with terror. I should say, he used every technique at his disposal during his time, but this raises the question, was he just great for his time, or is he still the undisputed champion of suspense? So we must ask, Psycho, does it hold up? After years of being berated and mocked by my peers for having the unmitigated gall to not see Psycho when I was 5 years old,
What are you, a baby?
I finally decided to sit down and check it out. This film is a mere 62 years old, so I can understand if you want to stop here to avoid spoilers. Psycho opens with the sultry setup of an affair between main-ish character Marion and her lover Sam. Well, it feels like an affair. In reality, Marion and Sam just can't get married because Sam has alimony payments, which I guess prevents them from getting married because Marion is a gold digger or something? I mean, they both seem to be living comfortably right now, so I'm not sure why alimony payments would make a difference in whether they could get married or not, but hey, it was the crazy 60s. Anywaysies, we soon learn Marion works at a real estate office and has the opportunity to embezzle a rich cowboy hat-clad father's down payment on a house for his daughter's wedding. So she steals the $40,000 and skips town to meet up with Sam. And in case you're wondering, with inflation, $40,000 is now worth $1.357 billion today. Marion hits the road, and we have our first tension-building moments as she behaves strangely and arouses suspicion from a highway patrol officer, which ultimately amounts to nothing. It was almost as if Hitchcock used the situation to build meaningless tension, never to pay it off or even use it to advance the story. After a freak rainstorm, Marion is randomly forced to pull over at a motel which hasn't seen a customer in who knows how long. Actually, it probably says in the film, but I forgot to write it down, so just know that they're on hard times, which actually doesn't have an impact on the plot. It could. You know, this chick shows up with $40,000 and Alfie, that's what Hitchcock's friends call him, could have had Norman learn about the money and... Oh, I should probably clarify, if somehow you don't know, Norman is the murderer in this movie. It's portrayed as if it's his mother, but he's just impersonating her because she's been dead for years. Anyway, Alfie could have raised interesting questions by making it look like Marion was murdered for her money, but then had Norman throw the money away. It would have shown he's a true psycho and not interested in the money. Look, I understand this would raise some plot issues. I'm just saying, the money didn't have to be a pure MacGuffin. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, Marion and Norman kind of bond as they are having dinner after she checks into the motel for the night. However, his kind demeanor quickly changes when she suggests he put his mother in a home to take care of her. There is a good use of tone shift here as we feel tension building between the two of them. Also, he never blinks in the scene, which is a common tactic that makes a viewer uncomfortable. I would be curious to know at this point if anybody in the original audience didn't suspect Norman was the killer. I knew going into it that Norman was, well, Norman Bates, but it still seems obvious to me that he would be the killer. Although Alfie does an alright job of trying to throw you off the trail in scenes with Norman when he's having a conversation with his mother's obviously female voice. Which I kind of feel like was cheating because they used an obviously female voice actor to do the voice when Norman was supposed to be the one doing his mother's voice. Right after this we have the shower scene. And I gotta respect the bold choice Hitchcock makes here, killing off the established main character less than halfway through the film. That's hardcore.
Wow, hardcore.
Granted, it would have been nice if we had a replacement main character we cared about, but people who pay their hard-earned money to watch movies can't be choosers. Next, Norman cleans up the scene of the crime, putting Marion in her car and sinking it into a swamp. He also tosses the newspaper containing the money without ever realizing there was money even in there, solidifying its place in history as a pure MacGuffin. As I read the plot summary online, I just now learned that Marion decided to return the stolen money, which just goes to show you kids, if you decide to do the right thing after you do the wrong thing, you'll get murdered. A week later, we are now following Marion's sister Lila as she searches for her sister and the stolen money, going to meet Sam in California. She confronts him, and we're soon introduced to the private investigator hired to recover the money. In his search, he ends up at the Bates Motel and grills Norman about what he knows, finding cracks in his story. He attempts to speak to Norman's mother, and is unsurprisingly stabbed to death. It was a cool shot though as he falls backwards down the stairs. The disappearance of the PI prompts Lila and Sam to investigate for themselves. This is when we get the big reveal from the local sheriff that Norman's mother died 10 years prior. So Sam and Lila end up at the motel. Sam distracts Norman while Lila investigates the house. But Norman gets annoyed and knocks Sam out. It's a good thing Norman isn't a murderer or something like that, or Sam might not have been around to wake up just in time to stop Norman from stabbing Lila to death dressed as his dead mummified mother. Wait. This leads us to one of my major complaints. This movie is all about building suspense by any means necessary, but there's basically no payoff to that built-up suspense. Norman runs into the room with a knife and barely struggles as Sam easily overpowers the big bad enemy by simply grabbing his wrist. Without a big fight at the end, it just kind of undermines Norman as a villain. Instead of continuing to build the tension as Norman and Sam struggle over the knife, not knowing whether Sam will be murdered and Lila soon after, Sam just lazily grabs his wrist, and we cut to the jail afterwards. Here we get 6 minutes of the just now introduced boring psychologist expositioning all over the place, telling us who Norman is. The first time I watched it, it literally felt like 20 minutes to me. It told us a bunch of information I didn't even care about and answered a lot of questions I didn't have. And that's basically the whole film. Overall, story-wise, there is an arc. There are obvious stakes. Anyone could die if the villain is left unchecked. But character-wise, every person is static. Marion dies before she can really change. Lila and Sam are honestly pretty one-dimensional. I couldn't tell you anything about either one. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing Lila's name correctly. The PI is nondescript, other than being very gruff and P-I-E?
Pie.
And while Norman is a complex character, he is static, which is fine. I'm not putting the burden on the crazy villain to be dynamic. I'm just saying we've come a long way in the realm of character development. We've also come a long way in the realm of this video. But you're gonna have to stick around till the end to see whether I determined whether it holds up. The acting is fine. It definitely has the dated quality of the mid-Atlantic accent, and other than Norman, no one really stands out as either good or bad. There are no Daniel Day-Lewises in this film.
Why don't I own this?
The closest thing is Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates, who probably set the standard for creepy thriller villain. But even so, I'm not sure if he rises to the level of a great actor in Psycho. In terms of visuals, they mostly hold up. Some effects are more poorly crafted than what you'd expect nowadays, but the camera angles and movements are well motivated and do well to build and pay off tension. This is especially obvious in the shower scene where there are 52 cuts, pun intended, in a 45-second sequence. It's like watching a MrBeast video. Apparently there were 78 camera setups when they filmed this scene. I can definitely respect the effort and innovation that went into this sequence. It's iconic for a reason. And that reason is that it's the first scene in Hollywood history with a toilet. True story. The film's lighting looks dated, but honestly that's not something I hold against an old film. It is what it is. Though it is interesting that Psycho was done in black and white, even though it followed Hitchcock's North by Northwest, which was done in color. But I guess there is something to be said for a horror film being done in black and white. The sound is great. The Psycho soundtrack is another iconic element this film put into the world. And another fun fact, apparently a cassava melon was used to make the stabbing sound effects. Really, no complaints there. In my reviews, I most heavily weight storytelling and acting. And as such, Psycho fails to meet my expectations of a great film. The story, and especially the climax, fall short, leaving you to wonder why people consider this film a classic and not just a technically impressive stepping stone used to inform future film endeavors. So, does Psycho hold up? You can probably guess from what I've said so far that no it doesn't. As with any film, parts of it do and parts of it don't. I'm not arguing Psycho wasn't innovative for its time. It spawned the entire genre of slasher films and revolutionized how movies were filmed and edited. A movie can still be a classic for the inspiration and innovation it brought into the world, while not living up to the modern filmmakers' expectations of greatness. My point is, if it were to be made today with a well-defined story arc and more complex characters, I believe it could rise to higher heights.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Oh, maybe not. Oh my gosh, thank you for subscribing. Do you agree with my conclusion? Think I got it all wrong? Leave a comment below and I promise to give you a response, at least for the foreseeable future. Oh, and also check out this other controversial film opinion.